Today on the Cryptocurrently podcast, lots to get to. Donald Trump signed something to address the fact that children are being separated from their parents. Is he capitulating to the left? Rachel Maddcow goes on TV and cries real hard. But there was a serious vacuum of tears going on. And as we all know, nature abhors a vacuum. Trey Gowdy on the Hill, and people are still calling him a sellout for something that he said a few weeks ago. Also, Peter Fonda shows us the true face of the left. And later on in the show, we got Bible stories. Got a little bit of everything here for you folks. Meanwhile, in the actual cryptocurrency market, shenanigans, right? The market's still not above $300 billion. We have a special guest coming up. I told you earlier in the week that it was going to be this week, but he wrote me. His name is Rich. I know that's terribly vague. I'm aware of that. I just, I don't want to I don't want to say anything more about him than he's willing to have, put out there. So when he comes on the show, if he wants to tell you what his full name is and where he works and what he does, and I know that he will, but I'm just going to make sure that I don't, do anything that's going to step over the line. Because we had a conversation over the weekend, and, he was saying, like, look, there's some ongoing investigations, and I'm not going to be able to talk extensively about those because it's an ongoing investigation, which is, listen, that's absolutely fair. So I'm just very careful to not say too much. But he wrote in and he said, look, you know what, next week would actually work out better for me. And my theory is, hey, man, Rich, this is your show, baby. You do whatever you want to do, right? You want to come on next week? That's fine, too. And I'll send you a note, let you know that I put your name out in today's podcast. But look, there's a lot of shenanigans, as we all know, going on in the cryptocurrency market. There is a vacuum of rules. Again, nature abhors a vacuum, right? Whenever there's, whenever there isn't structure, you're going to see crooks, right? Whenever there's not, law and order, you're going to see crime. Right? Crime against people, against morality. And we're seeing a lot of that in the cryptocurrency market, which has kind of given me sort of a breather to look at the bigger picture, right? Because we're talking cryptocurrencies, and the reason why people are so hopeful about cryptocurrencies, at least in part, and I would estimate a very large part, but to whatever degree, we're all looking around and saying, wait a minute, man, we're $20 trillion in debt, 20 trillion US dollars in debt. We owe that. Who do we owe it to? Why have you been printing up money? That's against the law. It's against the law to just be printing up money. Well, it's okay if the government does it. No, you are the government. You are the government. This is by the people, sweetheart. You are the government. And you are not allowed to go into your bathroom and print up money in your bathtub. It's against the law. And there's a very good reason for that law. And it's the same reason our elected officials are not allowed to do it either. Because it destabilizes an economy. So we're all looking at the cryptocurrency market going, perhaps this is a way out. Perhaps this is like a cheat code, right? where we get to just circumvent all of the bad things that are on the horizon. And they are on the horizon. Look, the government's just been printing up money and for the last, at least the last 3 administrations, just printing up money. Oh, Iran, how would you like to have $1.7 billion? Well, let me just go to the shed and print it up for you. Here you go. Here's a secret plane, by the way, while you're at, look, we're all looking at that going, okay, this can't possibly end well. And it can't, right? There are consequences that are coming in the foreseeable future, right? And if we're not very careful, it's going to get it's going to get ugly, right? Real ugly. Because of that. So we're, again, we're looking at the cryptocurrency market going, okay, well, maybe this is the way out. Maybe if I can level up and get enough Bitcoin, and that whole thing works out, then maybe I'll be safe from the deflation of the value of the US dollar that's coming if we're not very careful as a nation, right? That's why we're looking at the cryptocurrency market. We're looking at it with hope, right? We're looking at it as a refuge. Like maybe I can, maybe I can be protected. Maybe my family can be protected. And at the same time, there's all of this BS going on in the cryptocurrency market, right? You got John McAfee out there saying, I'm going to run for president. Oh, God. Okay. All right. You know what? I'm not even going to talk about that. Like, that's so ridiculous. John McAfee, all right, you run for president, right? You go crowdfund, right? Because there's certainly enough people out there that'll send that guy money, right? Speaking of money, listen, I want to give a shout out to, notice how smooth that segue is getting off of John McAfee running for president. I want to give a shout out to listener Bad Wolf. That's not his real name. His real name's Abraham Lincoln. But Bad Wolf, man, sent me a windfall of money yesterday on my PayPal. So chances are today's episode is going to be seriously short because with my newfound wealth, I need to get a hold of a representative from the Pablo Escobar Coffee Trading Company and Stormy Daniels' agents. Coke and whores, baby! Thanks for the money, Bad Wolf. I appreciate you. Listen, if you want to become a donor, if you want to throw a little cash my way, whatever, you can go on to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. That's my website, and you can become a monthly patron if you want. That's one way to do it, and then other people just like to use the PayPal thing and just do like a one-time thing. Whatever your flavor is, man, it's all appreciated. It all goes to support the show and, get me to a point where I can level up, get some microphones, get some, soundproofing, get my family back to the United States and do the show there, which is going to, as time goes on, that becomes more and more important. Like I got a guy coming on, again, he's in California, and every time I get a guest, lined up that they're in California, it's the time difference is so brutal, right? It's like, well, I can stay awake till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning to talk to this guy, which I'm not going to do. I won't do that because I have a baby and I got another one on the way. Like my family depends on me being of sound mind. If I don't get my sleep, man, I go to bed at 8:30 my time. I wake up at 5:30. Those are the rules, right? And so if it doesn't fit into that little time frame, which it puts the guest in a weird position too, because it's like, well, if I'm not going to stay up late, that means that they have to stay up late, right? So it's really a conundrum. But anyways, another thing too, Bad Wolf had pointed out that the reason why my website runs so slow is because I put all of my YouTube videos on the front page. Now see, this is the thing. This is why I appreciate you guys so much. And again, I encourage you guys, like, don't think that there's something that you can't tell me. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a good idea, believe me, I am not a technological mastermind, right? I barely know what I'm doing when it comes to technology. And if you see something, dude, say something. Because it's going to be news to me. And Bad Wolf told me that last night. He's like, dude, the reason why your site's so slow is because you got all this information like right up front. It's like, oh, that's why that happens. Okay. So now I'm going to fix that over the weekend. I'm not going to do that today, but over the weekend I'm going to fix that. But anyways, Patreon and PayPal, it's right there on my front page if you want to go there. Thanks again, Bad Wolf, for the money. And look, there's another thing. Let me just bring this up here. Now, Bad Wolf is a friend of the show, and he has multiple sclerosis, right? And I have one other friend that has MS, and it's not, it ain't pretty, right? It's one of those things where you look at your fellow man and you see that they're in pain, and you just it makes you feel helpless, right? Look, I believe very strongly. I believe with all my heart that Jesus did in fact walk around and heal people of blindness and heal people of sickness. I believe that, absolutely. And whatever that was that he had, right? Whatever Jedi powers that he had, I don't have that. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have whatever level of understanding that it takes to perform miracles. Like, I don't have that. And apparently neither does anybody else. You know what I mean? Certainly not Benny Hinn and those kind of people. I mean, I believe that there's people out there that do, but the reason why you don't hear about it is because they are actual true followers of Jesus Christ, and it would never occur to them to try to bring fame to themselves because of their understanding. But what I do understand is that I don't have it. And so I you know, one thing I've learned is, you know, like if you're confronted with something where you don't know what to do, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to do with that. All I know is that it makes me feel powerless and, you know, weak, right? It makes me feel like, you know, I can't do anything. I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. Right? Nobody likes that feeling. Right? And I just find that, you know, in those situations, when you don't know what to do, just say that. Like, I don't know what to do with that information, man. It just makes me, you know, I wish it wasn't that way. You know what I mean? I don't know what to do about that. But one thing we can do is, you know, you can take a moment, right? You've got 5 seconds, don't you? Right? If you're just sitting in your car and you're not driving, right? If you're not moving, just close your eyes for 5 seconds and think about Bad Wolf and think about multiple sclerosis. And just think like, hey, Lord, man, I'm powerless here. I'm powerless here. Can you please fix this? Man, our brother's in pain, and I can't fix it. Can you please fix it? You know, outside of that, I don't know what else to do. Right? That's I just, you know, hey, you know, Bad Wolf, you know, I know what your real name is, but I'm sorry if that, you know, I don't know how you feel about me talking about that, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but, you know, I think it is important to be cognizant of, you know, the people's pain around you. You know what I mean? It brings us all closer together. And, you know, like we had, you know, another listener to the podcast came on in our Telegram group and was explaining like his daughter was born 23 weeks, you know, into the pregnancy, and like that, you know, his baby made it and she's now strong and healthy, right? Like, you have to be cognizant of people around you and that other people are going through things, right? Everybody's got their battle, man, you know, and you have no idea what other people are going through. You know, multiple sclerosis is like, you know, for a long time, you know, like my friend who has it, you know, if you met him, you wouldn't know it right away, you know, and until you gave him enough space to explain like what his normal days are like, you wouldn't know that he's in pain, you know. So you just, you know, you never know. But anyways, on to the show again. Bad Wolf, thanks for the dough. I'm not actually gonna blow it on Coconut Wars. President Trump. Right? Okay. Now, politics and economics, right? That's what we talk about on this show. We talk about pragmatic spiritualism, right? Taking a pragmatic approach to it. Now, listen, I'm already seeing the vitriol over this thing, whatever it was that President Trump had signed about, you know, keeping those kids at the border with their parents. Right? There's already people saying, "Oh, he's capitulating to the left. Oh, he's weakened. He's being weak." Okay, that is certainly one way to look at it, right? That is a fair assertion. That falls within the parameters of a reasonable point of view. It is, all right. Hold on a second here. Hold on. There's other ways to look at it as well, and let's just look at one of those. Right? There's a number of ways to look at it, but we've already talked about one of them, and your assertion is that is a reasonable argument, right? So we have to pay attention to it because it does fall within this, you know, like if somebody said, "Well, listen, I think the Illuminati got to him." It's like, okay, well, that's not a reasonable argument. Dismissed, right? There's, you know, aliens from outer space are controlling Donald Trump, and that's why he signed that thing. It's like, dismissed. Like, that's not reasonable. But saying like, oh, Donald Trump caved to the left, the pressures of all the media hype and all this other thing. It's like, that's reasonable. Doesn't mean it's right. Just means that's a reason. Okay, that's reasonable. Let's look at one other possible, reason for why he signed what he signed. Okay, and number one, I'd like to point out that this was an executive decision, right? I remember when Barack Obama was making all those, I have a pen and a phone, right? And he was making all those executive decisions. Well, guess why? It was so easy for Donald Trump to just get in there and overturn them. Well, the reason why is because if you don't have congressional approval, like we have laws, people, you know what I mean? We have a structure that kind of works, right? But it is a structure nonetheless. And when the president just says willy-nilly, like, oh, I'm just going to sign this thing, it's like, well, then, like, whoever the next president is, he will, notice what I did there. The next president, he can just overturn it with using the same function with a pen, because it's not solidified by Congress. It didn't go before the House. Like that's how our system works. So not only can whoever the next president is just completely overturn what Donald Trump did, Donald Trump can overturn it too. You see what I'm saying? So that being said, let's look at the problem here. The problem is that we have laws on the books that were put in place by Barack Hussein Obama, by George W. Bush, and by Slick Willie Clinton, right? The last three administrations have put laws on the books that caused that situation with those kids being separated to operate that way, right? And that it was, I don't know if ratified is the right word, but it was backed up by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? The most liberal circuit court of the most liberal court in the land. And they said, yes, this is how we have to do it. We have to separate those kids and put them in their own thing and whatever, right? That was the law. And when the left decided to use this as a tactic to distract America from the fact that right now Hillary Clinton, James Comey, a whole bunch of other FBI officials, like all these people at high levels of the government are being found out, to be possibly guilty of treason. Now, to the uninformed, like treason comes automatically with the death penalty. It doesn't mean like if you get found guilty of treason, you don't have to get the death penalty, but it's always on the table. If you get charged with treason and get found guilty, death is on your doorstep, right? Being executed in front of the whole world is on that's on the menu, right? And there are people right now that were working for the FBI, right? That it kind of looks like they committed treason. And so the left comes out and they find this thing like, oh, this situation that we as Democrats created, right? We're going to use that because there's a lot of people in America who are so dumb that they'll think that this is Donald Trump's fault since he's the guy who's in charge right now, right? And the left came out and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I know that these are laws that Bill Clinton signed and George Bush signed and Barack Obama signed, but we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at the procedure of the law. Because Donald Trump, he stepped up the procedure and said, listen, we're going to start following these laws that the Democrats have put in place. And we're just going to start deporting people, right? And if you come over with your kids, like, and especially, keep in mind, most of these kids, they were not accompanied by their parents. There is overwhelming evidence that what's actually going on down there at the border by way of the laws that the Democrats have put in place is child trafficking. There's 12,000 kids in detention down there, which is horrific, all right? Listen, you have to be empathetic. Like, that's a horrific situation that those kids are in. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's 12,000 of those kids, and 10,000 of them did not arrive with an adult who was of related to them, right? Out of the 12,000 kids, 10,000 of them were they either came by themselves, but most of them came with an adult who was of no relation to them. You know what that smells of? Trafficking, child trafficking. And you know who's responsible for those laws? You see what I'm saying? So the Democrats, in their infinite ability to shoot themselves in the foot, they come up and they come up with this big idea, like, while all this stuff is going on in Capitol Hill and all these people are being exposed, let's distract the American people and take this mess that we created and let's just put it on TV and make it look like it's Donald Trump's fault, right? And when they brought in, and when we brought up the fact, like, no, this is the law that your people put this in place, right? You bring that up and they say, well, it's the procedure. It's not the law, right? And why do you keep bringing up old stuff? It's like, dude, it's the law. Your people wrote it. You just want to disregard that. You don't want to look at that. You don't want to look at that and acknowledge that your people put that law in place. Okay, fair enough, right? Fair enough. Let's look at the procedure. Yeah, the procedure's, it's pretty bad, right? It's awful. These kids are suffering. People are suffering. That's awful. And so what does Donald Trump do? Does he, he signs this thing where it's like, no, the kids can stay with their parents and be deported with their parents. What does he do? What does that actually accomplish? It takes away the argument from the opposition, right? Now the only thing they have left to argue is the law, which was put in place by the Democrats. Do you see? Is that another possibility? Is it possible that what he was doing was simply snatching away the argument that, like, there's just this monster in the White House and he's separating people? Well, there you go. Now what are you going to argue? Now what's your argument? Oh, the law. I see. Now you're going to have to acknowledge who put that law in place. You're going to have to acknowledge what party they represented and what ideology that party represents. The ideology of the left and everything's free and we should have open borders and whatever. Now you're going to have to acknowledge that. So, yes, perhaps Donald Trump capitulated to the left, or perhaps what he was doing was putting his boot on the throat of an argument and he killed it. Is that possible too? I'm sure there's other possibilities as well. Perhaps the Illuminati did get to him. Maybe the aliens from outer space got to him. Who knows? I don't know the man. Do you? Huh? I don't know the man. Let's see what happens. So that's moving forward. Teargate, right? Rachel Maddow crying on television. Oh, these kids that I didn't care about for all these years. Now I care so deeply, right? Now listen, I'm a new father, right? Today's the 20th, for 2 more days and my son will be 10 months old, right? His birthday's coming up in August. In 2 days, my son will be 10 months old. Now, already, he's begun to learn that if he makes crying noises, we can get what he wants, right? It's one way, right? It's one way of saying, hey, Dad, come play with me. I'm bored out of my skull over here. Why don't you turn off that computer and stop editing stuff? Okay, son, you're right, right? And he'll make a crying noise because he knows if he does that, my heart is going to bend, and particularly his mother. Right? But at a certain point, you got to look at him and be like, dude, you're not sad. You're not crying, man. Come on. Toughen up. I don't actually say that. But, there's that thing, like, where if you're a parent, like, it's like there's actual crying when there's tears, it's like, oh, he's actually sad or in pain, right? He's teething right now. And then, like, sometimes there's actual tears. There's a difference. One is a form of manipulation, which is fine, that's part of the natural progression. As little babies learn, like, oh, if I make this noise, people will respond to me. And that's, that's natural, right? But it is a form of, manipulating your surroundings. So Rachel Maddcow goes on TV and, oh, boo-hoo, boo, right? No tears, No tears. Oh, Rachel, you're not really sad, are you? Or maybe you're just really dehydrated. Somebody give this lady a glass of water. She's bawling her eyes out and she doesn't have enough water in her body to, to produce tears. And this is the left. This is what they do. This is why it's important to be in control of your emotions, right? Emotions are a great thing, right? How many times have I talked about on this show, like, look, your emotions are not a compass. You're not to guide your path and determine what path in life you're going to take based on your emotions, right? Your reason, your intellect. These are the things that you need to get through this life. Emotions are there to be the spice, you know what I mean? The salt and pepper. And when people are twisting your emotions, right? It's manipulation. They're trying to get you on their side of thinking like, oh, nobody wants to see a lady who looks like a man cry. Nobody wants to see people crying. Oh, poor Rachel. Oh, what can we do? There now. If I give you some money, will you stop crying? You know what I mean? Nobody wants to see people crying. But it's manipulation, and this is what the left does. They don't want you to see that there's people right now in our government that have been subverting the will of the people and committing treason. There's a whole... Listen, think about this for a second. What if Hillary had won? None of us would know any of this stuff had happened. What other secrets are there? What other secrets are there? How many more? Why is it that the Bushes are coming out against this president? Because they got secrets too, I believe. I have no idea what they are. But the more we dig into this, those people that come up with conspiracy theories about September 11th, it's like, oh boy, look at all these secrets. Is it now outside of the realm of possibility that there are secrets about September 11th that those people don't want anybody to know? I'll give you a perfect example of that. And again, it's not a conspiracy theory. I'm just saying that there's secrets, and those people want those secrets protected. But we can go all the way back to John Kennedy, the assassination of a sitting U.S. president. Why is it that those are still classified? What could you possibly be hiding? It could be a number of things. Maybe it was an inside job, right? Maybe the CIA did it, and that's why they're doing it. That's one possibility. Really, there's an infinite number of possibilities. Maybe they just don't want you to know because whatever. They don't, maybe the Secret Service had dropped the ball and they don't want to embarrass that department and therefore they keep it secret. There's an infinite ways, but maybe, here's just one, maybe there was talk in the investigation about whenever there's a catastrophe, whenever there's a tragedy, the government knows it's that old saying, never let a tragedy go to waste, right? When people are emotional, they're easily swayed. And people were very emotional when John Kennedy was assassinated, and perhaps government officials were thinking about running a false flag operation and saying, well, dude, we can start a war right now, and everybody in America will be on board. Maybe that's what's in there. Who knows? But whatever it is, it's such a big secret that they even convinced the current president of the United States to keep it classified for a little while longer. Dude, that was so long ago. It's like, dude, what could it possibly matter? What could you possibly be hiding that you don't want me to know? I wasn't even alive when that shit happened. It's like keeping secrets about the Civil War. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, whatever it is, we're going to forgive you. You know what I mean? It's so long ago. It doesn't matter what it was. And yet they don't want to talk about it. So boo-hooing Rachel Maddow, right? And the left getting on TV and trying to distract people from what's really going on and moving forward as far as Teargate goes. Let's look at, you ever heard of Peter Fonda? Right? I'd heard that name, but it's like, I don't know if were you in a movie? I know your dad was. I know your sister's a cunt, right? But who are you, Peter Fonda? And he said, now this is it. Now, remember, pragmatic spirituality, right? How do you marry those two? How do you address the idea of angels and demons and good versus evil, and like, how do you have that conversation? Well, it's subtle, right? And also brazenly in your face at the same time. So here's Peter Fonda, and I quote, "We should rip Baron Trump," who, by the way, child. He's an innocent, right? He is not of the age of accountability. He's a little boy. This is what Peter Fonda has to say about Baron Trump. "We should rip Baron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if mother will stand up against the giant asshole she is married to." End quote, Peter Fonda. Now, this is the face of the left. This is the tolerant left. These are the people who have been shouting you down now for decades, saying we are the emissaries of peace and love and righteousness. We know better, right? Your ancient religions, your customs, we've evolved past that. Now we are the smart people, and we are going to bring about peace and justice and equity. That's the face of it. That's who those people are. They talk about pedophilia and rape like it was funny. This is humor for them, right? Now, again, we've talked about the importance of a sense of humor in this life. Like it has actual medicinal value. This is what's funny to those people, right? So let me just segue into this right now as I have this moment encapsulated. This week, right? This week or this weekend, you need to make sure that you are registered to vote, right? Now, I made a comment yesterday on the show that I think left a little room for misinterpretation. I said, look, the left is they're cannibalizing themselves. They're doing all the hard work for us, and they are. But you have to vote this year. You have to vote. And you have to make sure that your vote does not get stolen, right? Most people believe that they are registered to vote, and they are not. If you move, right? If you move residences, then you are no longer registered to vote, right? If you have not voted, and I believe it's 4 years, if you haven't voted in the last 4 years, then they kick you off the rolls. You need to verify that you are in fact registered to vote, and you need to get your vote out this year. You cannot lay back this year and say, my vote doesn't count. Your vote does count. And even if let's just say you're right and it doesn't count, then it doesn't hurt to do it, does it? Right? If it doesn't matter, then it won't hurt anything by you. You have to vote this year. We cannot let these people win the Senate. We can't let these people have any power, because they're evil. Because they will create a situation where children are being trafficked at our southern border, and then they'll come on TV and make it sound like it's my fault and your fault. And you're not a real Christian if you let this thing happen. What would Jesus do? Yeah, what would Jesus do? I'll tell you what he wouldn't have done. He wouldn't have let this situation be signed into law in the first place, for a number of reasons. Not the least important is that he would never be a politician. But these are the people that they're manipulative, right? And their weaponry is weakness, right? And all they have is false emotions and fake tears. You know what I mean? And false equivalencies. You have to vote this year. And you have to vote in 2020. You have to vote. You have to vote this year and in 2020. Make sure that you have an up-to-date voter registration card, right? You fill out your voter registration thing, right? And it's got the prepaid, send it back in the mail thing. You don't even have to stamp it. And believe me, that form is very long, but there's actually only about 10 things in there. It's like name, address, date of birth, country that you were born in, driver's license number. You don't have to put in your social. You don't have to put in your phone number, and date it and sign it, right? There's actually, of that whole form, there's not very much on there that you actually have to fill out. You don't have to put your spouse's information. You don't have to list your kids or anything like that. Just fill out the pertinent information. And then they'll send you back a little receipt. Once you have that receipt, then that's how you know that you are currently registered to vote. And if you don't know, if you think you're registered to vote, right? Like if you are supremely confident that you are registered to vote, great. Then here's what you do. Go online, Google, and just type in, voter registration verification. Or just type in, am I registered to vote? And there'll be 10 different things that you can click on where it's just going to ask you what your name is and what your address is. And a lot of them, it's just like first letter of your first name, first letter of your last name, and your address. And if it shows you your full name and address, then boom, you know that you're registered to vote. Good for you. But if nothing comes up, then guess what? You're not registered to vote, which means the Democrats win. And by the way, if you're in California, I'm from California, all right? And I know this to be true. In California, if you want to vote for a Democrat, then you have to be registered to vote as a Democrat. And if you want to vote for a Republican, then you have to be registered to vote as a Republican. And if you are registered as American Independent Party, which most people think, well, I'm going to just be independent. Well, there is no independent party. There's the American Independent Party that's already listed there, and it's different. If that's how you are registered to vote, and you go vote Republican, they will throw your vote out by law in California. So Californians, if you are going to vote this year, if you're going to vote Republican or Democrat, you have to make that designation on your voter registration card, or they will dismiss your vote. They will take your vote away from you. And I'm not going to go much further on that. Trey Gowdy. Let's talk about Trey. Scathing conversation. Listen, if Trey Gowdy ever questions you or accuses you of something, you did it. Right? Trey Gowdy is the last guy you want to have getting up in your business. Now, look, I've heard some people say some bad things, because prominent conservative. This was here. I'll just read this to you. Prominent conservatives on Twitter once praised Trey Gowdy for his work as the House Benghazi Committee chairman. Now, many of those same conservatives have turned their backs on him, pushing back against President Donald Trump's claim that the FBI planted a spy in his election campaign. Gowdy had gone on to Fox News on May 29th, all right, so, just a few weeks ago, and discussed the Spygate claims, and he said, quote, I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information that they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump, end quote. That pissed a lot of us off, right? Pissed a lot of conservatives off. Oh, he's part of the deep state. Okay, fair enough. That's a fair assertion. Let's pick it apart real quick, though, right? That was May 29th. That was before the Inspector General report came out. That was before it was brought to light that the Inspector General report that came out had a bunch of stuff redacted from it, right? What Trey Gowdy was saying is it possible that what Trey Gowdy was saying was he was being the ultimate pragmatist, and he was saying, from what I can see, from what I have been given to make my mind up, everything looks pretty fair, right? From what I can see, from what I've been given, everything looks in order. So you got to think about the time that he said that, the information that he had at the time, right? Let's give Trey a mulligan on this one, right? Can we at least do that? Can we just say, look, Trey Gowdy's very good at his job, right? And apparently Trey Gowdy loves his country. He loves his fellow citizens. And is it possible that what he said on May 29th was just saying, look, from what I can see, right? You don't want that guy going off the reservation. You don't want that guy making accusations that he cannot later back up. That's the last thing we need. The last thing we need is that guy losing cases because he's running his mouth reckless. You need him to be very diplomatic in the things that he lets come out of his mouth. Because let me tell you something. The reason why he's backing out of Congress, right? The reason why he's leaving, because he's a congressman in I believe South Carolina. But the reason why he's leaving, in my opinion, is he's going to go get himself set up to be in position to become a Supreme Court justice. And I could be mistaken, but if that happened soon, he would be probably one of the youngest Supreme Court justices ever appointed. We need that guy. We need that guy in that seat, right? Let's not tar and feather him just yet, shall we? Can we give him a little room? Because I don't think tearing away at that guy is what we need to be doing right now, right? So that's it. I'm a big fan of Trey Gowdy, and I'm willing to try to see things from his position. Now, real quick, just a Bible story, and I'm going to let you go. King David was once on the run. Him and his men. They were being chased down by a bunch of Philistines, right? And they got themselves, they had made camp in this little valley, right? And they had hit, these were guys that knew how to live in the desert. And they knew how to hide underneath the sand and in caves and whatever. And they had gotten themselves into this little valley, and they hid because the Philistine army was overwhelming. It was a huge army. And as they were hiding, the Philistine army, they made their camp on the rim of that valley, right? They didn't know that King David and his men were down in that valley, but just a twist of irony or complete coincidence, they had made camp on the rim of that valley, overlooking the valley, right? And they were King David and his men. They were in this cave, and they were kind of going through strategies of how they might fight if they were found out. What they would do, because the Philistines had them at an elevated position, which means death, right? That's how you know if you're going to lose a battle, right? Is if your enemy has the high ground, right? So they're sitting there and they're trying to figure stuff out. And the thing about King David was he had very specific things that he liked to do in his prayer life. And one of the most important things for him to do was to walk and pray at the same time in what he called the cool of the day. Now, what that means is that's the time when the sun it's still in the sky, but it's close enough to the horizon so that the sunlight's not beating up on you directly, right? The sunlight's kind of coming in at an angle, and it's cooler. It's a more relaxing time of the day, and that's where King David felt the deepest connection to his God, right? He would walk in the cool of the day with him. Now, he was in a weird position because he was in this little valley, and the enemy was on the rim of that valley. And King David had a decision. I can either stay in this cave and die a spiritual death, right? To not be able to communicate with my God openly and to feel his love and protection over my life. I can stay in this cave and die a spiritual death. Or I can go outside and go for a walk where I will certainly die a physical death, right? But either way, I'm dying. That was his dilemma as he sat in that cave. And it was in that cave that he realized, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of my own death, I'm going for a walk with my God. That's how it's going to be. That's faith. That is faith in your God. Ooh, goosebumps. I love that story. Be strong, be courageous, and know that God protects you and loves you very much. He knows you by your name. That's the show for today. Be reasonable and be courageous. I'll talk to you tomorrow.